Hey everyone, welcome back to JB's Budget Collecting and our weekly look back at the hot comics from 6 months ago. This week we're looking back at the hot comics from May 30th, 2025. And I'm recording this on November 26th, 2025. So Wednesday before Thanksgiving. You guys will obviously be seeing this after Thanksgiving. I hope you all had a wonderful Thanksgiving, got a chance to eat a lot of food and hang out with family, and hopefully it was all good and everything else. But we're doing our weekly look back. So this week we got 19 books to look at between the Comic Tom Key Collector Hottest Trending Comics of the Week and the CBSI Hot Top 10. So a lot of books to get through. So let's get started and see what we can learn this week. First up, we have a couple of books that were on the list related to the passing of Peter David, an underrated. My cat is going crazy. An underrated contributor, I think, in terms of comics. Someone that hasn't always gotten the due that he deserves. Obviously, most famously known for Hulk. Here we have Incredible Hulk Future Imperfect #1, the first appearance of the Maestro. This book was going for $25. 9.8s were only going for $70 back then. Raw copies have come back to their typical $5 to $15, but 9.8s are sitting at $120 to $125, so they've actually jumped up a little bit. But overall, we'll call this down, and I'll be back because by far the vast majority of sales of this book are raw copies. There's only a couple of 9.8 sales in there, so no reason to say up or anything like that with the 9.8 sales, but still a pretty good book. Next, we have Incredible Hulk 377, first appearance of Professor Hulk. This was going for $15. This is obviously there's the third print of this book is super valuable. This first print, just a regular, just a small key. Raw copies down 5 to 20, 9.8, 70 to 120. Call it down and I'll be back because most of the sales were under $10, but there were still a couple sales in that $10 to $20 range. Next, we have Superman, A Friendship Unleashed, the Milk Bone promotional book. My cat has went in and out of the room like 3 times since this started. I don't know if you can hear her running around or not. Last week we talked about it was a $50 to $75 book, but at this point it was $50 to $80, so basically still in that same range. $10 to $40 book now, 9.8, $250, so down in a dumpster fire. It's definitely dropped down. I think like a really high quality 9.8 obviously still goes for pretty good. But there was so much love in the lead up for crypto in the lead up to the movie. This was somewhat hard to get. People went a little nuts for this book. Still really valuable for a book that just came out this year, a promotional book like this. Still doing really well, just not those crazy initial prices. Next, we have Batman Adventures 12. First appearance of Harley Quinn. And this was one of those that Tom occasionally puts on the list because it just had dropped enough that we were seeing a spike in sales because it had gotten super affordable. People were buying it. It pushed it back kind of onto the list. $300 to $800 for raw copies back then. 9.8s were all the way down to $1,400 to $1,600. Now $2 to $650 on recent raw sales, but I didn't really see a super nice recent raw sale like 9.8 potential. I didn't really see one of those, but 9.8, 16 to 2,200. So they're actually up. So we're going to go up and worth it on this because there are several 9.8 sales in that $16 to $2,200 range. And yeah, so it appears the 9.8s have bounced back a little bit in value from what it was, whatever the floor kind of was with this particular book. Next, we have Superman versus the Amazing Spider-Man #1, the Treasury edition from 1976. First ever Marvel and DC crossover. Obviously, this was with the announcement of the Batman Deadpool books that we got, or Deadpool Batman that we've gotten over the last couple months. That we were getting a Marvel DC crossover again. That's what prompted this back into the consciousness. 20 to 130 for raw sales back then. Now 20 all the way to 350. Most of the sales are still kind of 20 to 150-ish, 170-ish, but there are still a couple sales over 200. There's a sale all the way up to 350. So obviously some really nice copies going for big money here. Obviously no slabs on these treasury size books. So we're going to still put up and worth it. There's definitely the high end definitely still appears to be higher than it was back then in terms of sales on this book. Next, we have New Mutants 98, first appearance of Deadpool, and this appears to have been related to that announcement of the Batman Deadpool book, at least a little bit of a spike in sales. Another book kind of like that Batman Adventures 12 that had dropped back considerably and was a lot more affordable than it had been after the movies and stuff. 160 to 300 for raw sales back then, 9.8 going for 800. Now 2 to 550 on recent raw sales. I don't know that there's really a huge difference there, but it does appear to be up a little bit on the raw side. 800 to 1100 though is definitely up on the 9.8 side, as most of the sales are around 1,000. So up in straight cash on this one as well. So both of those classic keys that came into effect in the late 80s, early 90s that we had on this list this week, both up right now. Next, we have Miles Morales, Spider-Man, number 33, first appearance of Powerlift, the Torrin Clark variant, on the list for the second week in a row. 10 to 20 last week, but at this point it was 10 to 30. Now it's 15 to 20, which is kind of settled in at the small key level. 30 to 45, though, only for 9.8. So that's not really a great sign when the 9.8s aren't really going for any more than getting them slabbed. So down and I'll be back. No reason really to chase this book in the moment. Next, we have Invincible, number 19, first appearance of Battle Beast. We had season 3 of Invincible that had just wrapped. We had the new Battle Beast comic coming out. Battle Beast was on the forefront of everybody. It had been on the list a couple of weeks ago. It was back. Raw copies over $400. A 9.8 hitting $13.25. Now it's a 3 to 750 for raw copies. So really nice raw copies. They're going for a lot. What is going on with my typos there on the 9.8 values? That should be a 9.8 of 750 to 1100. So 9.8s have definitely stepped back. I don't know. The 9.8 did not go for 32,750. You deal with me and my typing when I'm making these slides. So 750 to 11. So down and I'll be back on this book. Still a ton of interest. Still a high value for this particular Invincible book. Just not quite what it was back in the spring, and certainly not what I typed there. Next, we have The Curse of Shirley Johnson, the Ryan Otley 1 in 50, on the list for the second week in a row. Last week when we talked about it, it was set at 100. By this point, the second week, it was 100 to 140 for 1 in 50, which is really good. Only 2 recent sales still. I updated last week. We talked about these 2 sales. They're still the only recent sales. A raw copy went for 110, a 9.8 went for 140. We'll still call it steady. I'll be back. Obviously, that raw sale is in that same range, but not a ton of interest. But the listings are all higher. So it's not really selling. And the reason it's not selling is the listings are all higher than even these prices. So hard to judge anything other than saying it's steady since the 2 sales are in that range. Next, we have Mark Spears Monsters, number 1, the 5th print, 1 in 20, Mark Spears, Evil Dead homage. Evil Dead 2, I guess, technically homage. 80. Also, last week, 55 to 100. By this point, it was 80 to 105. Now it's 60 to 100. 9.8, 1 to 225. So big range on those 9.8 sales. We'll call it steady, and I'll be back. There are a couple sales under that $80 mark, but for the most part, it's kind of still between that $80 and $100 mark. So this book's still going basically what it was going for back then. Next, we have Fantastic Four, number 5, the Ryan Brown 1 in 25. This 1 in 25 was going from 50 to 65, which typically is right around double ratio, which typically means it's going to end up between ratio and double, which is pretty much what's happened here, 25 to 60. There are enough sales still in that 40 to 60 range that I just called it an I'll be back instead of a trap. But yeah, because there are still a couple sales up there, but for the most part, you can get this 20 to 35 to 40, somewhere in there. So it's definitely down, a little more affordable. Still a very cool Dr. Doom cover. Next, we have Nightwing number 126, the Vasquez Chigorov. I don't know how to pronounce this person's name. I'm really bad. I apologize to them. 1 in 25 was going for 70 to 140 right out the gate, which is 1 in 25, 70 to 140. That usually means that book's going to hold. It's going to be continuing to have really high value. Not the case here. This ended up being a dumpster fire, $30 to $45 right now, which is good for 1 in 25 after 6 months, but not near what it was back then. All right, next we have Superman Man of Steel, number 1, the new origin after Crisis. And this is really just movie buzz. Nothing specific about this particular book, just the lead up to the Superman movie was causing people to jump on Superman stuff. It's really lots of sales here, but it's only going for $5. A 9.8 did go for $120. Still a $2 to $5 book. 9.8, 90 on recent sales. So a down and I'll be back. Another book. I really enjoyed the Superman movie, but another book that wasn't really worth trying to chase in the moment. Next, we have a couple of movie rumors for the future of the MCU. Tell me if you've heard this before, but people think we're going to get Mr. Sinister at some point. This X-Men, Uncanny X-Men 221, first appearance of Mr. Sinister. This book has been on and off the list for almost the whole time that I've been doing this now, going on 7 years, because people keep thinking we're going to get Mr. Sinister. We still have not. My cat is going crazy. $25 to $75 back then, 9.8 200, which is down from some of the heights that it's had. Now it's at 25 to 60, 9.8, 150 to 200. We'll just call it steady and I'll be back. This book really sits kind of in this range. Occasionally it jumps a little higher, but for the most part, this is a pretty affordable key X-Men key. People keep specking on it. We'll see if eventually we get some version of Sinister. I would guess maybe, but yeah, I don't know that I would really invest in this book unless you just love Sinister. Next, we got Uncanny X-Men number 135. First appearance of Senator Kelly. More movie rumors. 5 to 60 back then. 9.8 400 for this classic Dark Phoenix saga. Classic cover. Now 20 to 125. Like clearly up on the raw side. The raw sales are clearly up from what we were talking about back then. People are spending more money for this. This is a classic cover. People have done it. 9.8 on the other hand are down a little bit. Overall, well, let's go with steady and worth it. This is a classic X-Men book because it's classic storyline, classic cover. Senator Kelly, if you're buying it for Senator Kelly, you're buying it for the wrong reasons, in my opinion. But yeah, so steady and worth it here, but really just because of the storyline and the cover than anything to do with Senator Kelly. Next, we have Invincible Iron Man number 53, first appearance of Friday. The AI that in Tony's suit in the movies. The rumor is Friday is coming back in the Vision Quest show. $3 to $10 back then, 9.8 150. Only a couple of recent sales. By a couple, I mean like 3, and they're all $8 to $10. So we'll call it steady and worth it because it's on the upper end of that raw sale range it was in, but not a lot of interest or love necessarily in Friday. I'd be very surprised if this book moves. But yeah, a very cheap book to get. Next, we have second week in a row, Avengers 162, first appearance of Jocasta. Also, potential love interest for the Vision Quest show. That was where we were going here, or just a character that's supposed to appear in Vision Quest. $15 to $50 by this point. Last week when we talked about it, what did it say? That's a good question. It was 10 to 40. So it has moved up a little bit. 9.8 had moved from 250 to 275. Overall, $5 to $20 book right now. No recent 9.8 sales. So down in a trap. No reason to have chased Jocasta in the moment. If you're interested in these kind of characters, now is a much better. We're closer to the show. Now is a much better time to get either Friday or Jocasta. But I wouldn't expect a ton of movement, or you're not going to make a ton off of these necessarily. Next, we have Peter Parker, the Spectacular Spider-Man, number 1, the second appearance of Tarantula, and this has to do with movie rumors for Spider-Man 4, and that Tarantula might be a villain. We've heard the number of potential villains, the number of potential actresses or characters that Sadie Sink is playing, and the speculation for the Spider-Man 4 movie has been crazy. But we got Tarantula here, $80 for a raw copy, 9.8 350 back then. 10 to 75 now for a raw copy, 9.8 3 to 350 down in. I'll be back. Most of those sales still are on the raw side here. Yeah, definitely easier to get right now than it was back then. A great Spider-Man book. Obviously, the first issue of the second series. The first time they moved beyond amazing. So yeah, a good book. A rare early 70s cover. You don't get a ton of MJ on the cover in the 70s. You get a little bit on the cover in the 60s and stuff. She kind of disappears from cover. So you do get an MJ cover here, but yeah, not a book that's going for a ton of money. Much more affordable now. Next, we have Web of Spider-Man number 36, first appearance of Tombstone, another rumored villain for Spidey 4. I think we maybe even got confirmation at this point. I don't know. I can't remember what we've heard and what we haven't. Back then, though, $20 to $60, 9.8 3 to 350. Now 10 to 35 for raw copies. 9.8, so 340 to 450. So those are up. 9.8s are clearly up. People are paying more, but there's not a ton of 9.8, mainly because there's not a ton of 9.8s out there, and there's, so there That also means limited number of sales. We're talking like 3 or 4 sales as opposed to the raw copies that are selling. So we're still going to call it down a trap for that raw price. It's much more affordable now. No reason to pay more than $20, $25 for this in that 40 to 60 range that people were paying. No reason to have done that. So down in a trap, but a cool and still very affordable Spider-Man villain. All right, that is this week's list. Those are all the books we had, 19 books. I hope you all had a wonderful Thanksgiving. Let me do the quick recap slide here. So we had 3 ups, 5 steadies, and 11 down. So we actually had more down books this week than we've had recently. We've been kind of mostly pretty even between steady and down, or even leaning a little bit steady the last few weeks. But yeah, this week definitely a lot of down. I want to do a quick shout out to my channel members. Big thank you to those folks in this time of thanks that have, for this last year, have kept this channel going, kept me going. I really, really appreciate all of you folks. You helped me afford StreamYard, helped me justify continuing to do this and dedicating time to doing this. I really appreciate all of you folks. So with that, I want to thank you guys for watching. I hope you had a wonderful Thanksgiving, and we will catch you next time. Later.